Hi, I'm Julie Hill, and you're watching part 1 of How I Shrink a Neckline. And this is one of my favorite sewing tricks. I use it all the time. It works best on woven fabric, and that's what I'm going to show you now. But look for part 2 if you'd like to see how I shrink the neck of a knit fabric, like a t-shirt that's lost its elasticity. So I learned this technique when I was reading through a college sewing textbook from the 70s that my grandma had given me. And the book called it Shrinking a Neckline. But you could probably also call it reducing or easing a neckline as well. Sometimes when you're making a shirt and you sew in the facing, you can stretch the fabric a little bit as you sew, making the neck turn out too loose. Or maybe you found a dress that you love, but the neck is just a little bit too big, or it hangs open. This trick can fix either one of these problems. All you have to do is take a needle and thread, and you make tiny stitches all along the inside of the neckline. And when you get to the back, pull this thread, and that will shrink the neckline. And that's the basic idea. So I'm going to go ahead and shrink the neckline of one of my daughter's dresses, and I'll show you exactly how I do it. I like to use hand quilting thread because it's strong and doesn't twist or get into knots as easily as regular thread, and I use a really small needle which will leave tiny holes in the fabric and make it easier to sew tiny stitches close together. After I thread the needle, I measure out the thread, making sure that it'll be big enough to go all the way around the neck with enough left over to tie a knot. Okay, so the first thing I do is to put a knot in the very back, close to the zipper if there is one. And I'm pretty fanatical about my knots. I really want them to hold. So I take the needle, grab a bit of fabric, pull most of the thread through, and then I tie the knot. So I make the knot, but I don't pull it tight yet. So I have this circle here. Then I stick the needle through the circle and then pull the thread. And that knot is not going anywhere. Okay, so then I start sewing right along the inside of the neckline, and I like to do a lot of little stitches at once. And I sew the whole edge till I get to the other side of the back, and make sure that the thread doesn't get any knots in it. You need it to be loose because you're going to be pulling it later. And also make sure that you don't stick the needle through to the front of the fabric. Okay, so now I've sewn all the way around the neck, and at this point you could go ahead and pull it as tight as you think it should be. But it's always best if you can try it on and then adjust it. So I'm not going to put a knot in yet. I'm going to try this on my daughter first and then adjust it to see how tight I want it to be. Okay, so this is my daughter, and this is her pet caterpillar that we found today. Okay, try to be still for a minute, honey.
Okay.
Okay, and here's the string. Well, be still. Right here. The thread. So you just start pulling it, and as you pull it first, you'll see that, yeah, it pulls it up tight, and also it puts some gathers in it. But you just spread the gathers around to the other side, and as you keep spreading them, it doesn't look like gathers anymore.
It looks like something wrong with my finger.
So smooth it until it's tight but not wrinkly.
I got the camera.
Okay, put your hands down for a minute.
It's scared of the camera.
Okay.
Oh no!
Oh no! Okay, so I got the neck to look just right, and then I took the dress off, making sure that I didn't pull this thread any tighter than it was, or let it be loose either. And now it's time to put the knot in. And once again, I want to make sure that this knot won't slip. So I grab a bit of fabric with the needle, pull my needle through until it makes a little loop. Then I stick my needle through the loop twice and pull. And that is going to stay, especially if I do it again. Okay, now I don't want to leave any thread sticking out, but I don't want to cut it too short and risk the knot coming undone. So what I like to do is stick the thread in between the layers of fabric here. Leave it about an inch on the inside. Make sure it's not showing anywhere. Pull it through, snip. And I go back to this piece from when I started, and I want to stick that piece through too, to the inside. Okay, so I have to rethread it. That's why you want to leave it long. Stick it in between the layers of fabric. Make sure it's not showing. There. And it's done. I've used this technique of shrinking a neckline on dresses and shirts with a facing, like this one, and also on dresses and shirts with this kind of a neck. And I don't even know what it's called, but shrinking a neckline works great on both. So next I'll be shrinking the neck of a knit shirt, the one I'm wearing actually. And if you want to see that, be sure and watch part 2. And thanks for watching.